Welcome to today's podcast. We're going to be talking about the three wise men. We've heard that in the Christmas story. We always hear about these three wise guys, not wise guys in the sense of organized crime, but these very wise men, and some call them the three kings, that came to visit Jesus during his birth. So our scripture reading comes from Matthew 2, verses 1 through 5. Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea during the reign of King Herod. About that time, some wise men from eastern lands arrived in Jerusalem asking, "Where is the newborn King of the Jews? We saw his star as it rose, and we have come to worship him." Now, King Herod was deeply disturbed when he heard this, as was everyone in Jerusalem. He called a meeting of the leading priests and the teachers of religious law and asked them, "Where is the Messiah supposed to be born?" "In Bethlehem, in Judea," they said, "for this is what the prophets wrote." In Numbers 24, verse 17, it says, "A star will rise from Jacob, a scepter will emerge from Israel." So this kind of foretells what's going on before Christ was even born. In the biblical account, the wise men, also known as the Magi, were not specifically identified as three individuals, and their names were not mentioned. However, tradition has often referred to them as Caspar, Melchior, and Balthazar. It is important to note that these names are not found in the biblical text, though. According to the Gospel of Matthew, the wise men came from the east to worship the newborn King of the Jews. They followed a star that led them to Bethlehem, where they found Jesus and presented him with the gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. We all know this. As for their origin and profession, the Bible doesn't provide any detailed information. However, based on the role as wise men of Magi, it is believed that they were scholars or astrologers who studied the stars and interpreted dreams and signs. They were likely well-educated and knowledgeable in various fields of study, including astronomy and ancient wisdom. Traditionally, it is believed that the wise men came from different regions and represented different ethnic backgrounds. Some theories suggest that they may have come from Persia, which is modern-day Iran, Arabia, or even further east, such as Babylon. Their journey to worship Jesus demonstrates their recognition of his significance and their desires to honor him as the King of Kings. While the Bible does not provide extensive details about the wise men, their visit to Jesus is significant because it signifies the recognition of Jesus' divinity and the fulfillment of prophecy regarding his birth. Their presence at the birth of Jesus highlights the universal nature of his salvation, as they were Gentiles themselves who came to worship the Jewish Messiah. It's important to note that the specific details about the wise men, such as their names and backgrounds, came from traditions and historical accounts outside the biblical text. The visit of the wise men to Jesus and the gifts they brought hold significant meaning in Christian tradition. Here are a few points. First of all, recognition of Jesus' kinship. The wise men, who were likely astrologers or scholars, recognized Jesus as a king. They referred to him as the King of the Jews and came to pay homage to him. Their visit symbolizes the acknowledgement of Jesus' divine kinship and his role as the Messiah. Secondly, fulfillment of his prophecy. The visit of the wise men is seen as the fulfillment of the Old Testament prophecy. In the book of Isaiah, it is prophesied that nations shall come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your rising. The arrival of the wise men from the east can be seen as the realization of this prophecy. The verse refers to Isaiah chapter 60, verse 3. In the New International Version, it says, "Nations will come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your dawn." This verse speaks of a future time when the glory and the light of God's presence will be so evident that nations and kings will be drawn to it. It is often interpreted in relation to the coming of the Messiah, Jesus Christ, whose birth and ministry brought salvation and light to the world. Here's a third point. So this was really a revelation to the Gentiles. The wise men were not Jews, but Gentiles, representing the inclusion of the Gentiles in the salvation brought by Jesus. Their visit signifies that Jesus came not only for the Jewish people, but for all nations and people. Here's a fourth point. Symbolism of the gifts. The wise men brought 3 gifts: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. These gifts hold symbolic significance. Gold represents Jesus' kinship and royalty. Frankincense, which was used in the temple worship, symbolizes Jesus' divinity and his role as a priest. Myrrh, often used for embalming, foreshadows Jesus' sacrificial death. Then there was the adoration and worship. The visit of the wise men is an act of adoration and worship. They fell down and paid homage to Jesus, recognizing his divine nature and offering their gifts as a gesture of reverence. The wise men were about age 60, 40, and 20 years old, respectively. That's according to some research that has been done. Most of the research and a lot of scholars believe that Jesus was approximately 2 years old when the wise men came. Several things point to this. 2 verses in particular can be used to help in determining the answer, and that is Luke 2:16 and Matthew 2:11. In 2:16 of Luke, it says, "And they came with haste and found Mary and Joseph and the baby lying in a manger." Now that's significant. And then when you look at Matthew 2:11, it says, "And when they had come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary, his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented gifts to him, gold, frankincense, and myrrh." In Luke, when Jesus was born and the shepherds came to see him, he is called the young child. The 2 Greek words used are differently and point to the fact that Jesus had aged slightly between the shepherds' visit and the wise men's visit. In Luke 2:16, the word used for babe when the shepherds came is prepos, meaning newborn child or infant. In Matthew 2:16, the word used for young child when the wise men came in is paidion, meaning little boy or little girl, a young child. Also in Matthew, when the wise men arrived to see Jesus, it says that they came into the house. When Jesus was born, he was wrapped in swaddling clothes and laid in a manger. This manger was in a type of a structure that we would call a stable. So the family was no longer in the stable and had secured a home by the time the wise men arrived. And when you consider the time required for the wise men to observe the star, research it, the significance of it, and travel several hundred miles to locate Mary, Joseph, and the child. And interesting enough, Herod issued his edict to kill all male children 2 years old and younger. Matthew 2, verses 16 through 18. We can reasonably deduce that Jesus was approximately 2 years old when the wise men arrived. Overall, the visit of the wise men to Jesus holds great significance as it emphasizes Jesus' kinship, the fulfillment of prophecy, the inclusion of the Gentiles, and the adoration and the worship of Jesus as the Messiah. The wise men were significant, and they played a significant role in the story and the birth of Jesus. It highlights the universal nature of Jesus' mission and the profound impact of his birth on people from all walks of life. I'll conclude with what Billy Graham said about the 3 wise men. He said, "Perhaps the wise men in every age are those who leave their comfortable surroundings and embark on a journey of faith, seeking the truth and ultimately finding the source of all wisdom in the person of Jesus Christ." You have a blessed day.